Crystal chandeliers glistened across the grand ballroom of the Whitmore Hotel, casting a warm golden glow over polished marble and mirrored walls. It was the kind of night where dreams dressed in silk and diamonds danced beside the powerful and untouchable. The city's most elite had gathered under one roof, bankers, celebrities, diplomats, all to sip aged champagne and raise funds for a cause most barely remembered by morning. Everything gleamed with perfection. Everything, except for one young woman weaving her way between the tables, a silver tray trembling slightly in her hands. Rachel Moore tried not to breathe too hard. The scent of rich perfumes and truffle oil filled the air. Her black dress, borrowed in a size too loose, slipped at the shoulders no matter how often she adjusted it. It was one of those nights she never imagined being part of, at least not on this side of the event. She had once dreamed of designing ads for evenings like this, not serving hors d'oeuvres in heels she could barely afford to rent. She tiptoed carefully past a group of women laughing gently near the auction table. Their jewelry sparkled like they owned time itself. Rachel's mind screamed the same thing it always did during moments like these. Don't trip, don't drop anything, just survive. But Rachel wasn't just any event worker. At 26 she was a fighter, a graduate from a modest college in Brooklyn. She had once planned to open her own marketing agency, but after her mother's heart diagnosis, those dreams had paused. She worked mornings at a coffee shop, evenings at events like this, and late nights on freelance design work, every dollar sent back home to keep the treatment going. Her mother never asked her to. She just couldn't not. And so, here she was, shoulders back, tray up, pretending she belonged among chandeliers and champagne, flutes. That was when she heard the voice. If I'm not married by my 33rd birthday, the board will hand everything to Lucas. Rachel paused, breath caught mid-step. Her eyes darted toward table 12, where the voice had come from. He was sitting at the head of the table, sleeves neatly rolled, a gold timepiece catching the light. Ethan Carter. She recognized him instantly, CEO of Carter Holdings, billionaire, and one of the most sought-after bachelors in New York. He looked exactly like his magazine photos, but more real, less polished. There was something tired in his eyes, like he carried the weight of 1,000 decisions no one else had to make. Rachel had never been this close to someone like him. And then, chaos. A tiny white dog, probably belonging to one of the wealthy guests, started under a tablecloth and bolted across the floor. Charlie, no. A woman in red gasped as she ran after it. Rachel turned just in time to see the puffball hurtling toward her like a miniature torpedo. It raced between her legs and disappeared under a table. Her heel twisted. The tray tilted. Her balance gave out. Time seemed to freeze. A chorus of gasps echoed around her as the silver tray slipped from her fingers. Shrimp skewers and tartlets flipping into the air like a slow-motion disaster reel. Her hands reached forward to stop the fall, but her feet tangled in the hem of her too long dress. She fell forward hard, far straight toward table 12. She didn't hit the floor. Two strong arms caught her mid-air. Rachel blinked, stunned. Her face was inches from someone's chest, her hands gripping the lapels of an expensive suit. She looked up and gasped. Ethan Carter's eyes locked onto hers, dark, intense, surprised. "Are you all right?" he asked, voice deep and steady, like the chaos around them hadn't even registered. I think so," she stammered. He didn't let go. The entire ballroom had turned their attention to the scene. Servers froze. Conversations died. Even the jazz band missed a beat. Still holding her steady, Ethan glanced at the tray now lying upside down on the floor. Without missing a beat, he said loudly enough for the nearest guests to hear, "Best catch of the night." A few polite laughs rippled through the tables. The tension eased. The moment passed, but Rachel's heart hadn't stopped racing. She straightened quickly, face flushed crimson. "I am so sorry, sir. I didn't mean to." "No harm done," Ethan interrupted, brushing a canap from his sleeve. "Although, I might need rescuing more often if it means someone falls into my arms like that." A light murmur of amusement spread around them, but Rachel didn't smile. She bent to pick up the tray, hands shaking slightly. Ethan knelt down beside her. "Let me help." She stared at him. "You don't have to." "I know," he replied, "but I want to." They cleaned the mess together, though Rachel did most of it, frantically apologizing while avoiding the curious stares of guests around her. Ethan remained calm, collected. He didn't care about the tray or the food or the spilled drink, now soaking into his tailored suit. His eyes followed her, curious, observing. When Rachel rose to her feet again, the woman in red finally caught her dog and scurried off, mumbling something about leashes and embarrassment. The room returned to normal. But for Rachel, everything had changed. She tried to escape the scene, her cheeks still burning. "Wait," Ethan said. She stopped. "What's your name?" he asked. "Rachel," she replied hesitantly. "Rachel Moore." "Thank you, Rachel Moore, for the most unexpected part of my evening." He smiled, a real one this time. Not the kind she'd seen in magazines or boardroom snapshots. This one was genuine, almost boyish. Rachel nodded, then turned and walked away as quickly and gracefully as she could. But she could still feel his eyes on her back in the server's corridor. Her supervisor scolded her half-heartedly and handed her a new tray. Rachel said nothing, just clutched it tighter and focused on breathing. What had just happened? She tried to convince herself it was nothing. Just a moment. Just a rich man being polite to a clumsy girl. But deep inside, something flickered to life. For the first time in months, maybe years, she felt noticed, not for her mistakes, not for her bills, not for what she lacked, but for being her. And far across the room, Ethan Carter sat back in his chair, still watching the corridor she had disappeared into. He didn't realize it yet, but something about tonight had shifted for him too. He hadn't let go when he could have, and he wasn't sure he wanted to. The next morning, sunlight spilled into the small Brooklyn apartment like it had no idea what kind of night Rachel Moore had just survived. The faint hum of the city outside was familiar: delivery trucks, distant car horns, the rattle of the neighbor's ancient air conditioner. Yet inside, everything felt different. She stood in front of the mirror in her tiny bathroom, hair still pinned from the Gala, makeup smudged, eyes wide with disbelief. Did that really happen? She had fallen literally into the arms of Ethan Carter, and for a moment, the world had stopped. Not just because she'd nearly face-planted in front of New York's elite, but because he had looked at her and seen her. Not the tray in her hand, not the borrowed dress, not the clumsy mistake, just her. Rachel let out a nervous laugh, covering her face with her hands. "Get a grip," she whispered to her reflection. "He's a billionaire. You." The glamour of the night already felt like a fading dream, replaced by the same reality that always greeted her by morning. Bills stacked on the kitchen counter. A voicemail from her mother's doctor asking about insurance approvals. Her beat-up laptop blinking with unread freelance emails. Life waited for no one, not even someone who'd caught the attention of a man like Ethan Carter. She changed into her barista uniform and headed to the subway, reminding herself that nothing had changed. Except something had. She just couldn't name it. Across town, Ethan Carter stood at the window of his corner office, 20 stories above Midtown, untouched espresso cooling beside him. His assistant read through the morning brief, but Ethan wasn't listening. He was still thinking about her. Rachel Moore. It was absurd, really. He'd attended 100 galas, shaken 1,000 hands, smiled for cameras more times than he could count. But the look in her eyes when she'd fallen, pure panic, embarrassment, and yet honesty. It hadn't been curated. It wasn't polished or practiced. It had just been real. He didn't even know what she did or why she'd been there. But her name had stayed with him like a song he couldn't stop humming. "Sir," his assistant asked. You asked for the event report from last night, right?" "Yes." She handed him a folder, then paused. "You seemed distracted today. Everything all right?" He waved it off, but inside, something gnawed at him. It wasn't just curiosity. It was a feeling he hadn't had in years, a pull towards something unplanned, unpolished, unfamiliar. He opened the folder, scanning names and guest donations. Rachel Moore's name wasn't listed anywhere. Not as a guest, not as staff. He leaned back in his chair, his mind already working through possibilities. Maybe it was foolish. Maybe it was just a moment. But for reasons he couldn't explain, he wanted to see her again. That night, Rachel returned to the Whitmore Hotel not for another gala, but to collect her final paycheck for the event. She had almost decided not to go in person, afraid of bumping into anyone from the night before. But rent was due in 3 days, and tips from the gala weren't direct deposited. The staff lounge was quiet, mostly dark. She grabbed the envelope from the manager's desk and turned to leave when a voice stopped her. "You're Rachel Moore, right?" She froze. A man in a navy coat stepped out from behind the doorway. He looked corporate, tall, polite smile, holding a slim notepad. "Who's asking?" she said cautiously. "I worked for Mr. Carter. He asked if I could find you." She blinked. "What? Why?" "He'd like to speak with you." Rachel laughed, a short, nervous sound. "Is this a joke?" "No, miss." He asked personally. He was quite specific. Rachel's heart pounded. This didn't make sense. Billionaires didn't track down waitstaff after charity galas, unless— No, it couldn't be what she thought. She hesitated. I don't understand. I spilled food on his suit." "And yet," the man replied gently, "he hasn't stopped thinking about it." Rachel didn't respond. The man handed her a small, white card. It had only 2 words and a number. "Just coffee." Her fingers curled around the card. "Please don't feel pressured," the assistant said. "He just rarely does this. I think he'd appreciate your time." She stood there long after he left, card in hand, thoughts spinning like a carousel she couldn't step off. He wanted coffee, with her, and against all logic, against everything she had promised herself about men like him, about fairy tales and mistakes and complicated hopes. She wanted to say yes. Rain tapped gently against the cafe window as Rachel stirred the foam in her coffee for the 3rd time. Not drinking, not blinking, just waiting. The street outside was grey, the kind of cloudy that made the city feel smaller, quieter, like it was holding its breath. She had taken the farthest table in the corner of the cafe, one of the few she hadn't served at during her shifts here. Her apron was off today, her name tag gone, but her nerves still very much present. She checked her phone twice, no messages. Maybe this was a mistake. Maybe he wasn't coming. Maybe it was some kind of rich man's game invite, the help for coffee just to feel generous and worldly. Then forget 5 minutes later over a meeting with the board. But then the bell above the door chimed, and Ethan Carter stepped inside. Umbrella folded, coat damp at the edges. He scanned the room once and smiled. Rachel stood halfway before she realized she didn't need to. He crossed the room like it was already familiar, and stopped in front of her with the same calm energy that had unsettled her at the gala. Only now, dressed down in a grey sweater and dark jeans, he looked less like a billionaire, and more like a man trying not to be one for a while. "Hi," he said, slipping into the seat across from her. "Hi," she managed. "I'm glad you came." "I wasn't sure I would," she admitted, honestly. "I wasn't sure you would either." Both smiled, awkward but real, and then silence fell between them, not uncomfortable, just heavy with questions neither of them knew how to ask. Yet Ethan broke it first. "I realized something the night of the gala," he said, wrapping his hands around a cup. "The barista had quietly sat down in a room full of people trying to impress each other. You were the only one being real." She looked down. "I was also the only one who tripped and launched food like fireworks." He chuckled. "That too, but I meant what I said. You were the best part of that night." Rachel didn't know what to say. Compliments from men usually came with strings, expectations, or sweet words designed to go nowhere. But his voice was steady, not performative, not flirtatious, just sincere. "I still don't understand why you wanted to see me," she said softly. He tilted his head. "Would it be too much to say I haven't been able to stop thinking about you?" She looked up, surprised. "I'm used to meetings, mergers, and media headlines. But that moment catching you, hearing your name, seeing the way you held yourself even after being embarrassed, it stayed with me, and I wanted to know more." Rachel stared at him. "I'm just a girl who juggles 2 jobs and still can't afford health insurance." He leaned in slightly. "And I'm just a man who inherited a company he didn't ask for and spends every day trying not to drown in it." That silenced her. "Maybe," he added, "we're both more than what we seem." She blinked, her guard faltering. No one had ever said something like that to her before, not a man like him, not in a place like this. They spoke for over an hour, about coffee beans and advertising, about Brooklyn streets and billion-dollar boardrooms. He listened, he laughed, he asked questions like he genuinely cared. And Rachel found herself telling him things she didn't mean to, like how her mother used to write poems on grocery receipts, or how she once pitched an ad campaign to a bakery using only sidewalk chalk and a smile. He watched her like every word mattered. As the conversation wound down, Rachel reached for her bag. "This has been different," she said. "I didn't expect this." "I didn't either," Ethan replied, reaching for his wallet. She waved it off. I've got it. You invited me. She smirked. No, but I work here. Staff discount. He paused. That's cheating. No, she said. That's surviving. They stepped outside together. The rain lighter now, just misting the sidewalks. Ethan turned to her. Can I see you again? Rachel hesitated. She wanted to say yes. Everything in her did. But the world she belonged to, and the one he lived in, they didn't intersect. Not really. You don't need to fix anything, Ethan, she said gently. I'm not some story to be rewritten. I know, he said. But maybe I just want to read it. She looked at him, a laugh breaking through the uncertainty, and for the first time in a long time, Rachel Moore said yes to something just for herself. What neither of them knew then was that saying yes would be the start of something much more complicated and much more unforgettable. Asterisk, the first time Ethan showed up outside Rachel's apartment, she thought it was a mistake. A black town car idling at the curb didn't belong on her cracked Brooklyn street, not next to rusted bicycles and overflowing garbage bins. He leaned against the car casually, wearing a navy jacket and no tie, holding 2 coffees in one hand and a brown paper bag in the other. I come bearing breakfast, he said, smiling like this was completely normal. Rachel stood in the doorway, in her oversized sweatshirt and slippers, hair tied up, eyes barely adjusted to the morning light. How did you even find this place? He raised the bag. You told me once you lived above a laundromat. There are only 7 in this zip code. You searched all of them. I had help, he admitted with a smirk. But I came to see you, and I brought bagels. So that gives me at least 5 minutes of your time. She blinked, unsure whether to laugh or shut the door. Her mind spun through all the reasons this shouldn't be happening. This man had buildings named after his family. She had duct tape holding up her shower curtain. But instead of turning him away, she opened the door wider. He stepped inside, looking around with genuine curiosity. This is nice, he said. It's a shoebox. But it's your shoebox. It smells like cinnamon and coffee. That's a good sign. They sat on the tiny couch, their knees almost touching. Rachel took a bite of her bagel to stall her nerves. Ethan seemed perfectly at ease, like he belonged in small spaces and mismatched furniture. I hope this isn't weird, he said. I wanted to see you outside of fancy rooms and staged conversations. It's definitely weird, she replied, but not in a bad way. He smiled. That's progress. They talked for a while, about everything and nothing. He asked questions that went deeper than surface chatter about her childhood. Her first job, the dream ad campaign she still scribbled ideas for when no one was watching. And she asked him questions too, not the ones tabloids asked, but real ones, like what scared him the most, or if he ever wanted to walk away from everything. He hesitated only once, when she asked, do you ever feel lonely in your world? He looked down at his coffee. More than I ever admit. That honesty cracked something open between them. Over the next few weeks, Ethan kept showing up, sometimes in sneakers, sometimes in a car service, once on the subway with sunglasses and a baseball cap, like someone escaping a movie set. They walked in the park, grabbed street tacos, argued over the best pizza slice in the city. He never treated her like a secret, never acted embarrassed by her world. If anything, he looked relieved to be part of it. Rachel, for her part, tried to resist what was happening. It wasn't just about class, it was about safety. She had seen what happened to girls like her who let themselves believe they belonged in the castles of powerful men. It never ended well. But Ethan didn't act like a king. He asked for permission. He remembered details. He offered space when she pulled away and showed up again when she least expected it, with kindness, not pressure. Still, not everyone was as understanding. It started with a photo. Someone had snapped a blurry shot of Ethan and Rachel leaving the coffee shop. By the next morning, it was all over the business blogs. Who is the mystery girl with New York's most eligible CEO? Rachel saw it during her barista shift, nearly dropping a tray when a customer showed her the article on their phone. Her co-workers whispered. Her manager raised an eyebrow. When she confronted Ethan about it later that night, he looked frustrated, but not surprised. I knew it would happen eventually, he said. But I didn't sign up for this, she said quietly. I'm not a headline, I'm just me. I know, he replied gently, and I don't want you to feel exposed. So what happens now? He paused. We go on, if you want to. Rachel looked at him, and for a moment, everything else, the noise, the clicks, the whispers faded, because she saw it in his eyes. He meant it. He wasn't playing, he wasn't collecting stories, he was choosing her, so she made a choice too. "I do want to," she said, "but I need to do it my way." That night, she posted a quiet message on her own social account, a photo of her and Ethan, laughing at a food truck. No tags, no captions, just proof that whatever this was, it was real. It belonged to them before anyone else. But outside their small, growing world, something else was stirring. Because while Ethan's heart was busy opening, the boardroom he left behind had started to close in. And someone with the same last name was watching, waiting, and already planning how to use Rachel more against him. The elevator doors slid open with a soft chime, but the tension in the boardroom was anything but quiet. Ethan stepped inside, straightening the cuffs of his suit as every pair of eyes turned to him, some curious, some cold, others unreadable. The gleaming, mahogany table stretched out before him like a battlefield, and at the far end, seated with a smirk just sharp enough to cut glass, was Lucas Carter. "Nice of you to finally join us," Lucas said smoothly, not even trying to hide the condescension. Ethan didn't flinch. Had a breakfast meeting that actually mattered. A few board members exchanged glances, barely suppressing their reactions. Lucas tilted his head. "Right, the mystery woman the media can't stop talking about." Ethan slid into his chair, ignoring the bait. "If we're finished with the gossip, let's move on to the quarterly projections." But even as the charts flickered onto the screen, Ethan could feel the shift in the room. There were whispers, distractions, double glances at phones. He knew how it worked. In his world, public perception didn't just follow you, it defined you. One misstep, one wrong narrative, and it could all unravel. And right now, the headlines had stopped caring about Carter Holdings' international projects. They only wanted to know about the girl from Brooklyn. Lucas leaned in, tapping the table lightly. "You've always had a gift, Ethan. But attachments, they complicate things." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Only for people who see others as pawns." The meeting continued, but the air had already thickened with a warning. "Keep your heart close, or someone else will use it against you." Back in Brooklyn, Rachel stood behind the coffee shop counter, pressing cappuccino foam into tiny leaf shapes she didn't even realize she was drawing. Her phone buzzed non-stop in her apron pocket, but she didn't check it. The whispers had returned. Heavier this time. One customer asked if she was going to quit now that she had won the golden ticket. Another leaned over and said, "Don't let them eat you alive, sweetheart. These people love a Cinderella story until they don't." And worst of all was the email. From an anonymous address, no message, just an attached screenshot of an internal memo from Carter Holdings. Ethan Carter's association with non-corporate figures might jeopardize brand trust. Her name wasn't in it, but she was the only non-corporate figure in the equation. Her stomach twisted as she read it again and again. Later that evening, she sat alone on the rooftop of her building, knees pulled to her chest, watching as the sun dipped behind the skyline that never quite belonged to her. The cool breeze teased strands of her hair loose from their tie, but she didn't care. For the first time since that ridiculous, magical fall into Ethan Carter's arms, she wondered if she was becoming his weakness. The rooftop door opened behind her. "I figured I'd find you up here," Ethan said gently, holding to takeout bags. "You always show up with food," she murmured. "Because I don't know how to show up with answers." He sat beside her, not too close, but close enough that the silence between them felt less like distance and more like space to breathe. She held out her phone. "I got this today." Ethan read the screenshot. His eyes darkened. "This didn't come from me, but it came from your world." He looked at her. "Rachel, I don't want to be the reason you lose what you've built," she whispered. "You're not. They're already using me to chip away at your reputation. What happens when they push harder? What happens when you have to choose?" "I already did," he said quietly. "I chose you the moment I caught you that night." She shook her head. "But what if I didn't ask to be chosen? What if I just wanted to matter without being part of someone's headline?" Ethan reached for her hand. "You do matter to me. But if we are hurting you, I'll walk away. Not because I want to, because I'll never let anyone damage you to get to me." Rachel looked at him, tears stinging behind her eyes. "You'd give up everything." "I'd give up the wrong version of everything to keep the right thing." Her heart cracked open a little more, because in all the mess and noise and cameras and cruel whispers, here was a man not promising fairy tales, but offering honesty. That night, they didn't kiss. They didn't plan their future. They sat side by side under a sky full of questions, their hands clasped like a quiet vow. But down below, Lucas Carter wasn't finished, because somewhere in a locked drawer was a file with Rachel's name on it, and in that file was a secret she didn't even know about herself, one that could ruin everything. Asterisk. The envelope was thin, unassuming, just another piece of paper in a world where billion-dollar contracts and ivory invitations came daily. But the moment Ethan opened it, his blood ran cold. Inside was a printed page, nothing digital, nothing traceable, and on it, a copy of a birth certificate, Rachel's birth certificate. It shouldn't have reached his desk. It shouldn't have reached anyone's desk. And yet, there it was, delivered anonymously. At first glance, it looked ordinary, but then his eyes fell on one name, one detail that changed everything. Father's name, Jonathan M. Whitford. Ethan sat back slowly, the sounds of the city muffled by the roar in his ears. Whitford. The name wasn't just familiar, it was carved into buildings, hospitals, foundations. The Whitford family had once been one of Carter Holdings' oldest and most powerful business partners until a bitter legal split nearly a decade ago tore them apart and left the partnership in ashes. Lawsuits had been filed, allegiances broken, secrets buried, and now this. Ethan's hands tightened around the page. The timing wasn't a coincidence. Someone had found this. Lucas had found it, and he knew exactly what he was doing, because if it was true, if Rachel Moore was the illegitimate daughter of Jonathan Whitford, then her presence in Ethan's life wasn't just inconvenient. It was dangerous. It meant she had bloodline ties to the one family that could ignite a corporate war. It meant everything they had, every step, every smile, every soft, quiet moment was now a weapon someone else could use. And worst of all, she had no idea. Rachel paced her living room, unaware of the storm brewing behind closed boardroom doors. She hadn't seen Ethan in 3 days, not since the rooftop. He'd gone quiet, not cold, but careful. She knew something was wrong, but every time she drafted a message, she deleted it. Until finally, she couldn't stand the silence anymore. She texted him, if something changed, please just say it. I'd rather know than guess. He called 5 minutes later. I need to see you, he said. 10 minutes after that, they met in the park. Not the fancy one near his building, but the small one near hers with cracked benches and kids laughing over melting ice cream cones. It felt safer there, more real. He handed her the envelope without speaking. She opened it slowly, brows furrowed, heart thudding, and then she saw it. For a long time, neither of them said anything. This has to be a mistake, she whispered. The voice was soft. Do you know who he is? I've heard the name. My mother used to. Pause when people mentioned it, but I thought she was just. She trailed off, 1,000 childhood memories suddenly cast in a new light. She never told you. No, and now someone's using it to destroy us. Rachel looked up sharply. Us, yes, he said. Because make no mistake, Rachel, this is an attack. On me, on you, on what we've built. Lucas is using this. He wants to spin it like you were planted in my life, as some kind of revenge plot. She flinched. But that's insane. Ethan nodded. And it doesn't matter. They'll believe it anyway. The media loves a good betrayal story. Rachel sat down hard on the bench. So what do? We fight, he said. She looked at him, stunned. You still want to fight, even now? I didn't fall for you because you were convenient, he said, kneeling in front of her. I fell for you because you're the only person in my life who ever made me feel like I was enough without having to perform for it. You don't care about my last name, and now I don't care about yours. Tears welled in her eyes. But they'll tear us apart, Ethan. Then we hold on tighter. He took her hand and stood. Come with me. To where? To the one place Lucas never expected us to go. The Carter Holdings boardroom was full again, but this time, Rachel walked in beside Ethan. She wore a simple dress, no designer label, no hired stylist. But her spine was straight, her eyes clear. I know you've all heard things, Ethan began. Some of them true, most of them twisted. But let me make this clear. Rachel Moore isn't a scandal. She's not a threat. She's the daughter of a man I once saw as a rival, but she's also the woman I love. And if that's a problem for any of you, you can take it up with me. Lucas scoffed. So this is how it ends. You throw away a legacy for a waitress. No, Ethan said calmly. This is how it begins. I stopped pretending the legacy matters more than the person I want to share it with. The room fell silent. Rachel didn't speak until every eye turned to her. "My name isn't Whitford," she said quietly. "It never was. My mother chose to leave that world behind. She chose to protect me from it. I only ever wanted to build a life, not inherit one." And then, to everyone's surprise, she pulled a folded paper from her purse. It was an offer letter for a small ad agency. Not owned by Ethan, not funded by anyone else. It was hers. "I applied 3 months ago. I got the offer yesterday. I'm taking it. I'm not standing here as someone's scandal. I'm standing here as someone with her own future." The board members looked at each other. One nodded. Another cleared her throat. And slowly, the tides shifted. Later that night, on the same rooftop where so much had begun, Ethan and Rachel stood under a sky that felt just a little more theirs. She leaned into him. "Still think falling into your arms was an accident?" He smiled. "No, I think it was the start of everything I never knew I needed." And from that moment on, no one, not tabloids, not boardrooms, not secret scoot, rewrite the story they chose to write together.